Welcome back to The Book People, where I interview people whose lives and careers revolve around books. I'm your host Aishwarya, and today we are talking about bookstores. So, I've always wanted to own a bookstore. I've spent so many hours just sitting in bookstores, browsing through books and bestsellers, and trying not to spend all of my money on books. But today, I'm going to talk to someone who actually made this dream a reality. So, Radhika Timbadia is the founder of Champaka, an independent bookstore in Bangalore. And we're going to chat about all the work and research that went into opening this store and how it has survived during the pandemic. I mean, it's not just survived, it's actually become one of the biggest, most successful indie bookstores in India right now. And they have their own online store and they opened a fun subscription box. So, more than anything else, Radhika has really been able to create this like literary haven for all writers and readers and book lovers and publishers to gather together. So, talking about writers, if you're a budding writer looking to elevate your writing by learning new advanced tips and techniques, you should check out our fiction writing online classes conducted by our beloved bound instructor Michelle DeCosta. So these classes are live, they're online, and in these classes, Michelle can really teach you how to read and analyze great works of fiction and how to incorporate those techniques into your own writing. And you will get feedback on your work as well. So if this is something that you find exciting, you can find more details about our online classes on our website, or you can check out the link in the description below. But right now, let's talk to Radhika about how bookstores really foster reading and how they are basically the backbone of the publishing industry. Radhika also gives me some really fun insights into her life as a bookstore owner and how she decides which books to sell. So let's tune in. Hi Radhika, and welcome to The Book People.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah. So one of my first questions to you is that, there are so many books out there. There are so many books being published in India, even internationally. So how do you decide which books to sell?
Yeah, I get this question a lot because we have a small collection and we curate quite a lot to keep that collection updated and the way we want it to be. So when we started, we decided we had some criteria that we wanted to follow, that we wanted to bring in certain kinds of diversity. So we thought about what does that mean? Like, what does diversity mean? It's such an often used word. So like geographical, race, I don't know, like language, like what are the different aspects that we're looking at? So we made a list of all the ways that we wanted to look at it. And we haven't, of course, managed to do all of that yet, but it's a work in progress. So we wanted to make sure that we have lots of women authors. We wanted to make sure that we have a good representation of subjects that are not necessarily, or themes that are not necessarily represented, or if they are, they're kind of hidden. So we always have a shelf on caste and feminism and certain aspects of history. So again, it's very subjective. It's what we felt that we could bring a focus on at Champaka and what we could do well. So it's personal, but also as thought out as we could make it.
Yeah, and I've actually noticed that, because I noticed that you have obviously like you categorize books by genre, but you have these collections on topics like, you have caste, you have feminism, you have queer stories, you have humor. And I found that very, very interesting because obviously, as a reader, I read by genre, but I really I think that is something that's really missing in the way we categorize books because I really like reading, say, strong women characters, or like multiple perspectives. And I feel like when books are sort of categorized according to that, it makes it much easier to find sort of the next book that I would want to read. Even though you have a small collection, it's still a pretty vast collection. So do you read all the books that you sell?
I mean, I don't know if it's possible for me to read all the books. But so Champaka is not just me. There's Nirika who works with me for the last year, and there have been people who've been advising and being part of this process from the beginning. So we all read a lot, and I think what is really exciting for us is that we've approached book selling from the perspective of a reader. And that's why we do these collections. We have so much fun doing them. Like, so they're the more serious collections and this whole non-fiction fiction section that we keep working on. But like, there was a month where we curated a collection on books about cats or books that have cats in them.
Oh,
And last month we did a
that's so
small,
exciting.
yeah, it was so fun. And we did a small selection of books set by the sea last month because I mean everybody was talking about going to Goa. Everybody, or they either wanted to go to
Yes.
Goa or wanted to be by the beach. Or I say, okay, let's create. And there was fiction, there was non-fiction, there was geology, there was all kinds of fun topics coming together. So we really approach that as readers, and we of course read as much as we can, and then we just take a call on the rest.
Yeah, no, that sounds, great because obviously I understand it's impossible to read all the books. Because if we had the time to read all the books in the world, we would, right? As book lovers. But do, awards or reviews or literary criticism, like, do those factors play a role in your decision making, or your selection?
So, I mean, while we do approach this as readers, it's not our personal collection. We are a bookstore, so it does affect us. It also, the themes that the books are about also affects us, and we're not. We also like to treat our readers as intelligent readers. So we don't believe in banning books unless books are outrightly talking about hate or we have to draw a line somewhere and we decide where to draw that line, but we don't believe in uh, treating our readers as unintelligent people. They should be able to make the choices that they want.
Yeah.
So all of these things, of course, make a difference to whether we stock and we're also learning. We're only 1.5 years old, so it was a process where we're like, should we get multiple copies? Should we not get multiple copies? How will this work? So we're still figuring that out as we go.
Yeah, so that is something, that I'm definitely curious about because it's not just, okay, which books do we sell, but it's also how many copies of this book do we buy? Like, how many copies do we think this book is going to sell? What are readers wanting to read right now? What are the trends in the market? So I'm really, really curious about how you sort of gauge those things or how you make these kind of decisions because I'm also thinking about how in India there's not much of data as such available about publishing, right? Or about like statistics about reading habits or all of those things, not as much as it is in say the US. So how are you sort of able to take those calls?
Absolutely. So, like I said, we're still learning how to do that. And the thing is, the books that are bestsellers in other places are not bestsellers with us. So we sell, say, 500 single copies of different books rather than 500 copies of one book, which just means more work for us because we have to keep getting more different kinds of books. But it's also what we actually set out to do. So it's interesting, and we're also learning as we go, and like the processes have slowly been put into place as we've learned what to do. Like our reading patterns changed a lot during this pandemic. Like we used to sell a lot of nonfiction. Even I was surprised in the first year. We used to sell a lot of nonfiction. But in during the pandemic, we've sold a lot of fiction. We've sold a lot more cookbooks. We've sold Indian fiction. We've sold international fiction, humor, romance, things that we didn't sell that much before. Crime. So it's been quite interesting to learn those patterns and then expand those collections based on what we have. We also interestingly sold a lot of Indian poetry, which I wasn't expecting at all. So again, we made sure that we have a good collection of Indian poetry, Indian poets available. So we just have to learn as we go. So one of my colleagues, Nirika, is very excited by some of the young adult literature that's coming out. But we have to make a lot of effort to actually sell that. And I was very surprised because I was like, there's so much amazing stuff coming out. I thought that would be the first to go. But it's not. Maybe the users are actually going to other online sites or they already know what they want, and there are a lot of sequels. So our assumptions are constantly being challenged.
Like you said, it's only been 1.5 years, and I think one of the best things, I mean, I wouldn't know, I'm guessing, but one of the best things of owning a bookstore or creating a space like this is to learn on the go, right? Is to sort of try new things, have the freedom to try new things, and then figure out what works, what doesn't, what you can stick to, what you can't. And I also know that a lot of research and a lot of sort of planning went into even opening this bookstore, right? Because I know that you planned for almost 2.5 years. So you did so many things, right? So you interned at a children's bookstore, you got a course as a library educator, and you sort of really learned all these skills. You did your research, you built your connections with publishing houses, with distributors before you even started the store as such, right? So I'm very curious about what this entire process was like. And did you know from the get-go that what you wanted to do was create or start a bookstore? And why a bookstore?
Yes, I did want to start a bookstore from the beginning. I'm also very excited by libraries, especially free libraries. But it's something that I hope to do more of in the future. So before I actually started before I started Chapaka, I used to work as a wildlife researcher and conservationist. That I spent 10 years writing grants and trying to get money to do the kind of work I wanted to do. And I mean, everybody has different experiences, but I, after 10 years of work in this field, still wasn't able to do what I wanted to do. So it was I love that, and I love what I've done before, and I hope to pick it up again also. But which is why I wanted a store which was self-sustaining. So I wanted to have a bookstore, which, I mean, of course, we put in all our ideas and create this space that we think really needed to exist, which we felt that there was a niche for, and yet it sustained itself. Like I want to be able to pay good salaries to all the people who work for us. I want to be able to, and just based on the fact that people like the books and buy them. So it was important for me to at least start this as a bookstore with the ideas that we had, so that it sustains itself over the long term. That was what I really wanted. So I did all of these things, but I was really not prepared for the first year. So I don't think you can be prepared for what hit us in the first year and the pandemic. So I've also learned much more about finance than I knew earlier. For example, there's all these fun things that we keep throwing at, but then there's also the business side of it that I've had to learn the hard way. How if you want it self-sustaining, how do you keep it self-sustaining? and we've had this wonderful community of people who supported us from the beginning. It's something you really hope that happens, but you can't expect. And I was so happy and so grateful to these people who've come and supported Chapaka and all these.
I think when people think of a bookstore, they only think about the books. But there's so much more that you have to figure out, such as, like you said, finances, even inventory, right? Sales is something as simple as keeping the place clean, right?
Yeah.
So what does a working day in your life look like? I mean, pre-pandemic, what did it look like?
Yeah, pre-pandemic, we were going at some crazy pace. I don't know how now that I think about it, I don't know how we managed it. We were doing a lot of events, but we were so excited in our first year to have this space, to have all these people there. So we were doing 2 events a week almost. And we're a tiny space. And so I mean, a typical day would start. I did a lot of finance and accounting and expenses and reordering and all of that. And we also ran a small cafe at that time, so there was a lot of work that went into that. We had almost 10 people at that point. We were 10 people working together, so there was like daily meetings and pep talks and how to keep everybody happy and positive. So all of that, and there was the best part that all of us enjoyed the most was talking to our customers and recommending books whenever we could. And then we were always planning for the future. So the subscription program is something that we wanted to start earlier, but again, we started planning for it 6 months before we actually launched it.
Yeah.
So these were hectic days, but nice days.
No, they do sound great. And talking about the pandemic, so 2020 obviously has been such a tough year for bookstores, right?
Yeah.
Especially sort of brick and mortar bookstores, because again, you had to be closed during the lockdown, people couldn't buy physical copies, and you did adapt. So, for, like when you're talking about your subscription model, so that was something that is very new, and very unique and very exciting. I mean, to me, I find it very exciting because I love subscription boxes of any kind. I'm a sucker for subscription boxes. And obviously, like
Yeah.
when it is books and when it is so curated and, it feels very personal, it feels very well thought out, very meaningful. So, how did you come up with that idea and what is your sort of plan with these subscription boxes?
So again, it was something that we wanted to do for a long time, even when we started, but we didn't have the mind space to actually put it together then. And when the pandemic hit, we realized that we better really put this together quickly if we want to survive this. But it is one of the projects that gives all of us joy. It's we read all the books. We have meetings where we talk about why this book and why not this book, and we write notes with each of the books that go out. We also, get, if there are some unusual publishers on board, we ask them to write a note to our subscribers. There have been books that have been out of print that have been reprinted for this. So that is so, it's so exciting for us. It's and some of the discussions that we've had, like the end of month discussions that we have with the author or the translator or the editor, also sometimes have been the most personal and fun and intimate discussions that we've had about books before. So this project has given us a lot of joy, and I hope it has given that joy to our customers as well, who are getting these subscription boxes. So it's been a wonderful journey for us, and it really did help us survive the pandemic. Like we were not getting any income more or less until October,
Yeah.
and it was people. I mean, people who bought the first set of subscription boxes especially had no idea what they were going to get. So I'm so grateful to them that they trusted us.
I think now your subscription plan is focusing more on translations as well, right? So I think you're bringing back again that diversity element that you were talking about by focusing on translations, by focusing on sort of that aspect of Indian books, right?
Yeah, so this whole year we decided to go with translations. Again, it was so niche, and I was like, what are we thinking? I hope we should buy it. But it was really nice because what we do is every month we have Indian. 1 month we have like Indian books, and 1 month we have international books, and we made it a point to have Indian books from different regions of India.
Yeah.
Some of them have been out of print books. Some of them have been books that have just come out and have not even hit the market yet. So we're trying to ensure that our customers may not have read these, our readers may not have read these books before. They're not the obvious choices, but they're very good books.
No, it sounds very, very exciting because, as someone who, again, I feel like translations aren't something that people in India speak a lot about or aren't something that are very uh, sort of easily or readily available or people talk about a lot as much as, I think, as much as international books, to be honest.
Mhm.
So as a reader, I have also, struggled to sort of find translations or figure out, even if I want to read translations, what to read, and whether that's Indian languages, whether it's international translations. So when the pandemic hit, because Champaka has sort of managed to, I mean, I think has managed to stay afloat and has managed to sort of take the pandemic in its stride and, figure out how to adapt to it, where a lot of bookstores have struggled. So how was that like for you, when the pandemic hit and the process of sort of figuring out how to adapt?
I think I think everyone has struggled with the pandemic in different ways. Even people who've done well in the pandemic have struggled in different ways. So, so I think what we did initially is we launched our gift vouchers, and that was very useful because it really helped us pay rent April and May. I'm not joking. That is what I paid my rent with in the month of April. May. We so new we had no buffer, and in May we stayed up almost every night and set up a website. So by end of May, we actually had an online store, which we have improved every month as we've gone along. I don't see this as something that we had a choice in. I feel like we had such, I mean, we had so little buffer because we had just opened that if it would have been a privilege to not do that. I would have been happy to just sit for a few months and wait for things to come back to normal, but I didn't have that choice. So we did everything we possibly could to stay afloat, and that's how we have stayed afloat. And all of us, to be honest, we've cut down our staff. We had to shut down our cafe. We've done many things that have been very painful for all of us because that team was something that we built over the year and we'd gotten very attached to. And we still meet them, and we paid them salaries for 3 months and then tried to find them jobs elsewhere. We tried to do the best we could, but it was still very painful to let go of people. And now, even now, after all these months, it's there are some 3 of us now, and we're all quite exhausted by the last year. But everybody is exhausted by the last year. It's not been this thing. So I think we did the best we could, and I'm glad that we could do it. And it was also only possible because so many people supported us.
But have you seen sort of a big shift in book sales or in any other aspect during the pandemic or because of the pandemic?
Yeah, again, these are probably not overall patterns because we are such a small store ourselves. But for us, book sales really picked up from October. So October, November, December have been good for sales. Initially, when we opened the store, June, a lot of people bought books in June, and then there was like a slump for a few months. But it was enough to, I mean, we survived, and touch wood, that's what, and the subscription happened. And but yeah, they picked up in October, November, and December. And the online store has been interesting for us to see because it's very different from recommending books in person and selling books in person. We still recommend books. People still call us all the time saying, my friend likes this. What will you recommend? So we do that all the time still, but it's still quite different from selling books in store. And it's very exciting to see that our books are going all over India. Like they're going to Orissa and Bihar and UP and West Bengal and Bombay and MP and Chennai. So many books are going to Tamil Nadu and Kerala. And it's like, oh, we're finally reaching other people outside Bangalore. So that's been nice for us to see also.
Yeah, because I think, you have said so much about how the focus is on building this community, right? Or building this space. And then you were doing that in Bangalore. But how has it been different doing that online?
So after the pandemic hit in March, we've been doing only 2 or 3 events a month, which is quite a lot because I feel like there's so much of this Zoom fatigue happening.
Yeah.
People are exhausted. They're online all the time.
There are just events happening everywhere.
Yeah. So we've just said, okay, we'll do fewer events. We're doing only 2 or 3 a month. And the subscription has also enabled us to speak to people and send books out to people all over India, and so has the website. We're still, I'm not a digital native like a lot of people are. Like Nirika, again, who works with me, she's much more comfortable forming online communities. So we're still slowly figuring out how best to do this. But people write to us, and that is so exciting. Like we get a lot of emails from people, either with good feedback, bad feedback, with people just writing and saying, I love this, thank you so much. And that has been absolutely wonderful. Like receiving emails from people. Sometimes people just send us like bookmarks, or it's like, oh, here is a book for your next event, or here's a thing I made for you. And there's, if you see our Champaka tree at the store, there are little friendship bands on it, and there's little paintings that people have given us, and all that is really wonderful too.
But that is so wonderful, and I find that so cute that they send these paintings or friendship bands or all these different things to sort of show their appreciation or their token of, I know, like you're building these relationships with people, you're building this relationship with readers and with the community, which I think is so interesting. So, on a personal level, what has the pandemic been like, for you as a reader?
Um, I think yeah, I think that people as a reader, it has been up and down. I think for everybody, and I don't think anyone should be ashamed of how much they're reading or not reading, or whether they're finishing a book or not finishing a book. I think we have enough to worry about in general
Yes.
anyway. So whenever anyone asks me, "Oh, I'm not able to get through this book," I'm just like, put it aside and read this something else that you might like. Don't stress about it. I've read a lot during the pandemic, but of course, there have been months where I barely finished uh, a few books. But reading is very comforting to me, and Nivika also who works with me, and we both read a lot, and we recommend books to each other. We talk about books all the time, so it is very comforting to me. I also read a lot of this year. I've read more crime than before. It's been one of my projects, which has been quite interesting. I read a bit of. I just finished reading Margaret Atwood's Hagseed, and it's very nice. It's not. I also read her Oryx and Crake before, and I was disturbed. And I was like, I'm not reading the second book in this trilogy yet. I'm going to get back to this later. But Hagseed wasn't like that. So that's a retelling of The Tempest, and that was very interesting and fun. And I've really found a lot of solace in books that have resolution. It's not something I needed before, but now I seem to feel like, okay, please resolve yourself. Please let the story resolve. So this
Please give me a concrete ending and don't leave me sort of wondering what happened. Life is bad enough as it is.
So this Carmen Maria Machado and her short stories, she doesn't give you any resolution. So I had a hard time finishing that book. They're fabulous writing, but there is no resolution in those stories. But so it took me a while to get through. But it's always fun to read these books.
No, I agree. I've also been reading a lot of thrillers this year, I mean in 2020, because I do usually love thrillers, but I find myself going back to like Agatha Christie, to like those very sort of classic
thriller. Comforting,
very comforting. And I've started reading more fantasy, which I have never done before. So I think definitely there is an element of wanting to escape reality and everything that's happening around us for me as a reader. But as a curator, you have, so much influence on people's reading tastes, right, and reading choices. So what are your influences and how do you decide which books to read next?
Well, thank you. I've never thought of Champaka or myself as an influencer. But
in the sense that you're a curator, right? So you, have some influence over people's reading choices, because they do, the people that come to your bookstore, for instance, right? Like they do look at your books and they think, okay, these are the books that I want to read.
That's true. One of the greatest pleasures living in Bangalore has been for me is having access to bookstores like Bookworm and Blossoms. They're giant, beautiful bookstores who, since my college days, I've always just gone and seen what's there, and I read the back, and I spend hours browsing, and that's how I used to decide what to read then. And we're very lucky still to. Bangalore is really lucky to still have these bookstores here, and. So, of course, people who didn't want to spend so much time reading those books, spending hours going to these stores, had a different problem, but I enjoyed this very much. That's how I used to choose what I wanted to read. And friends, like talking to people and saying, oh, this is what I'm reading, this is what you're reading, what should we be reading? Nirika, on the other hand, is very on top of, the blogs and articles and what is coming out, and she advises me quite a lot on that. And then I have a friend who's very, very well read, and when it comes to history and certain types of nonfiction, I always go to him. I was like, what have you read? And what is so exciting? What should I read now? Where should I begin? So I think talking to people and having that community of readers around me, and just seeing and reading a few pages of the book. So anyone who ever comes to Champaka, I'm always telling them, here, these are the books I recommend, but sit down on this table and read 2-3 pages of all of them and see what you think before you buy them, because that's the best way to choose a book.
No, that's great, because I think word of mouth, even for me, is a big thing. Like, I love knowing what my friends are reading, like talking to people about why they like certain books and what they liked in a book, sort of brings out that passion. And I love doing that to people. Like, I love, having these 2-3 books that I absolutely love. And I go and I sort of talk to each friend about it and I hound them till they go and they read it.
Yeah.
And then they love it and come back to me saying, thank you for forcing me to read this book. I've done that with Frankenstein in Baghdad, which is also a translation. So you should check it out.
We'll do, definitely.
So yeah, I definitely agree. And what I want to know is, what is your idea of a good book?
Like, I don't like books that are moral or preachy, whether for children or for adults. I don't like books that are pretending to be pretending to give you a message, or that have all books have an agenda, but an agenda that I don't want. Like, if the agenda is to tell me a good story, that's a great agenda. But if your agenda is to talk to me about some politics that I don't want to talk about, then that's not a great book. Even good non-fiction, you always read with knowing what that person's agenda is.
Yeah.
But certain books don't do it so well. So other than that, I think what is a good book changes over time. So of course, good language is important. Clarity of thought is important. And then whatever comes out of that, certain themes are very that I always go towards. There's an honesty in certain in writing that's very enticing to me. So other than that, it all depends on my mood and the year.
No, I agree. I think, about the agenda thing, because I also don't like books where they're sort of either moralistic or didactic, in the sense that, they're telling me this is how you should feel about something. Or, this is how you're supposed to react to something. And I appreciate books where things are more open-ended, where there is space for me to make my own, judgments about things, or make my own judgments about characters or what is happening, and sort of think for myself. So I love those kind of books which really get me thinking, and which challenge me, like not just as a reader or an editor, but as a person, where I'm suddenly like, wait, I have all, is everything I thought about life been wrong all this time? I love those kind of books. And
like
those are the books that stay with me.
Existential crisis.
Yes, exactly. And those are the books that stay with me,
Yeah, I mean that's what good books should do. No, that they show you, whether it's fantasy or not, but they show you a whole different world and make you think and grow your mind and help you, and then bring it also back to yourself, because we have to relate to it somewhere.
Well, that's great. And you've also, because you do so many literary events and collaborations. So I really want to understand how you organize these events. Like, do publishers or authors or collaborators, like, do they reach out to you? Do you plan things and reach out to them saying, hey, we would love to do an event with you? Like, how does that process happen?
So it's a bit of both. When we started, we were mostly begging people, like, please do an event with us. And now publishers do reach out to us, and we do speak to some editors, and we tell them these are the kind of events that we'd like to do, and together we plan some fun things. We also regularly reach out to people that we want to do events. Like, we have our own series called Books for Now. Those are entirely planned by us. Then we also write to international authors that we really like. Like, we randomly wrote to Roxane Gay, and she agreed to do an event with us, and that was like so fun and so sweet. And we wrote to Tiffany Sao, and she agreed to do an event with us. She's an Indonesian American author. So we regularly write to people, and publishers also write to us. So now it's more of a collaborative process in how we do things. We've not done many workshops this year, again, because of this Zoom fatigue that is going on.
So, because you started this bookstore 1.5 years ago, and because we talk so much about obviously during the pandemic bookstores have struggled, but also there is so much conversation around bookstores and whether they're viable or not, what is happening, what is sort of the future of bookstores in India, because we're thinking of Amazon, we're thinking of people all the time saying that like Indians aren't reading anymore, or reading isn't relevant anymore, or no one reads books anymore. So, what do you think is or are some of the biggest threats as such to bookstores? Especially independent bookstores.
I think to address what you said last first, I do think people are reading. I do think that reading is relevant to a lot of people. I do. We're lucky in Bangalore, but now also all over India, that people are discovering books in different ways. Um there are many threats to independent bookstores, though, in India. And I think one of the, again, this is my limited view from the last 1.5 years, but I think one of the biggest threats is the industry not coming together. There is not enough communication between bookstores and distributors and publishers and the people who are doing the marketing for them, or people who are and our readers. Like, why are only the bookstores talking to the readers? Or why
Yeah.
does Amazon have first access to books that independent bookstores should have? Like, it just makes it easier for people to buy in different spaces. And I think one of the biggest threats to independent bookstores in India is this industry not coming together, not having enough communication. And I think, I hope that that will change in the next few years.
Yeah. So, this brings me back to when we were talking about, there being this lack of data or this lack of information or statistics about any kind of thing in publishing. And I think, that's something that I keep coming back to, because even if we talk about like this conversation today, right, or the conversations that I've been having with other people from publishing, I think there's so much about publishing that is so secretive and is something that people aren't aware of as much. And I feel like if there was more conversations around it and more transparency, it would really help people understand what is happening in publishing, and it would help people join the industry more.
Absolutely. And the thing is, the industry as a whole has been undermined, Like, if you think about who's making money, authors are not making money, booksellers are not making money. Who's making money? Why is the whole industry undermined? And by who? Like, why are we not valuing this? Also, this is where libraries come in. Are we nurturing readers? Libraries are very important for the entire industry, and they've disappeared from India. I mean, I grew up seeing so many more libraries than I see now. We're not nurturing our readers.
No, because I agree with you. Because, as
Yeah.
children, I feel like especially libraries are the first place where you get introduced to books, and you start sort of reading and figuring out what kind of books you like. Like for me, it was my school library. So definitely libraries are something where you can reach out to new readers, because it's also a space where there are so many books available that are in that sense free to read. Because, even though we think of books as this very like lofty, amazing, artistic um, thing, they do cost money, and money can be such a big concern in terms of who has
Yeah,
access to books and who doesn't.
absolutely. And with our population going more literate, we have to introduce joy for reading. You're reading for pleasure. You're not just reading for literacy, or you're not just reading because you want a job. And how will you do that if you don't have access to books?
Yep.
So I think there are many things that we can do, and it's exciting if we do manage to do them.
You started a bookstore in Bangalore, which already has such big bookstores, like you mentioned, it has Blossom, and it also has spaces which are like a bookstore come event space, like Ata Galata, and you created your own space in that same city where these spaces already exist, and you've managed to hold your ground and create your own niche within that.
Yeah. And I think Bombay and Delhi also have some fabulous bookstores.
Yes.
But I mean, I grew up in Bombay, and whenever I visit my family in Bombay, I make it a point to go and visit all of these other bookstores and buy from them. And similarly in Delhi. But I mean, it'd be wonderful to also see if these bookstores could be viable in other cities and smaller towns in India. It's something that doesn't exist yet. Yeah, but as of now, I mean, there's space for many more bookstores. And if we support each other and if we find a way to talk to each other within the industry, and I think there's a lot to do. It's very exciting.
No, definitely, because I've seen sort of
Yeah.
these kind of spaces or bookstores emerging in Pune, or obviously
Yeah.
Calcutta has
Yeah.
a huge literary tradition, so there are definitely bookstores there, and they are really, really amazing. But yeah, I think if we saw bookstores of these kinds in smaller cities, I think that would really also bring that love for reading into those cities, and really
I think
create that
so.
joy, like you mentioned. So, what's next for Champaka? For the coming year, or for, I don't know, the next 5 years with the pandemic and everything else?
I think I'm careful to make plans now because the pandemic took all my plans and threw them out of the window. So, I think in the immediate future, we want to grow our collection, so we're working on that. We want to do better what we're already doing for in the next year or so, and after that, we'll see. We have lots of exciting plans, but let's see how they plan out. Yeah, so we started a library last year for children under 12 years, and we also run free programs in schools here. So we want to expand on that. We want to do more of this library work for children under 12 years. We want to grow our collection for adults. It's something that we've always done. Like, we're slowly growing our collection as we grow older, because as we have more money to buy more books, we want to do more events and conversations with authors that are not traditionally sought after or looked after, but are fabulous on their own. We want to, like I said, better our subscription program. So this is the year to consolidate and do better what we're doing.
That sounds great. And do you have any advice for people who either want to plan on opening their own bookstore or want to enter the publishing industry in some way?
So if anybody does want to open a bookstore, then I recommend to get to know their finances before they do it. Please know something about accounting. Don't be as dumb as I was. But other than that, I'm a very systematic person. So I just made a list. I was like, okay, I need to know this, and this. And then I went and did it. And then and also have a great support network, because that's what makes Champaka what it is. The number of people who come together to make this happen. And if you want to open a bookstore and you want to get in touch with me, I'm very happy to have a conversation with people who want to do that. So always open for that.
I think that's great advice, because I think that's something that people struggle with, which is how do you reach out to people, right? Like, can you just randomly email them or like text them on social media and say, hey, I want to do this, can you help me? So I think that's great advice. Just take a chance.
I did get snubbed many times, but I also got really good advice, and I continue to get good advice from these people. So I think definitely reach out to people.
Great. Okay, I have a couple of like last questions for you. So these are more sort of fun, rapid fire type things. So just if you could answer them quickly, if possible. Okay. Best and worst part of running a bookstore?
Best part is all the books I can swim in, and worst part is accounts.
And I love that for the best part, it's not reading the books, it's swimming in them. Because I think
them also.
No, but especially because you said swimming, because I think, we read we read so few of the books that we actually own or buy or have around us, that I think swimming is more realistic. That I can keep all my books around me and just swim in them.
Just the joy of having all these books around me. I go there and I feel less anxious in life, I think.
That's great. And if not this, what would you be doing with your life or your career?
Oh, maybe I will continue with wildlife research and conservation. I want to do libraries more full time, and somebody will give me money to do that. And I want to, I have many fun things that I want to do in my life. I do crochet, so I want to start this
Oh,
artistic
that's interesting.
crochet initiative in the future. I have many ideas.
So this is not a pandemic thing, the crocheting. This is a thing that you've liked from before the world
No,
turned
yeah, I
upside
actually
down.
learned how to crochet when I was working in Spiti. And we were working with the women there, so I learned how to crochet there. And before that, I didn't realize that I could do anything with my hands. I was never artistic or anything. So this was like, wow, I can do this. And I've loved it since then. So
That's been me currently with music. I decided to learn the ukulele. But yeah, I think that was my last question. So Radhika, thank you so much for doing this and coming here and answering all my book questions.
thank you so much for making this so fun for me.
So that was Radhika Timbadia talking about how bookstores and libraries are essential for building reading communities and how the publishing industry really needs to come and rally together in order for all of these players, including bookstores, to survive and to grow. This series is brought to you by Bound, a company that helps you tell your stories. You can find us at Bound India on social media, and you can tune into the video version of this series on our YouTube channel. You can also find our range of online classes, including the fiction writing one, on our website. And if you want more details about the publishing industry, you can download our free research document on demystifying Indian publishing, and the links for both of these things are in the description below. Thanks for tuning in to The Book People. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm Aishwarya, and I'll be back next week with another guest and a new question to answer. Until then, keep reading.